Happy Rule 5 40-man roster protection day for all my fellow super baseball nerds out there. On today's show, I will explain everything you need to know ahead of today's deadline about the Rangers and why it's one of my favorite days of the baseball offseason. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before I get into what is the Rule 5 40-man roster protection, why it matters, who's going to be protected, who's not going to be protected, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now, today is a very holy day for the baseball nerdiest among us, the most inside baseball. This is going to be a very inside baseball episode. So if you're more of a casual baseball fan, I want to try and bring you up to speed as well, show you why this is important, why I'm nerding out so hard on this, and why it is one of my favorite days of the baseball off season. Now, the deadline to add players to the 40-man roster to protect them from the Rule 5 draft is today at 5 p.m. I believe that's 5 p.m. Central Time, not Eastern Time. Now, the Rule 5 draft is a thing that exists. It will happen at the baseball winter meetings, which will be in Dallas, I believe the 10th through the 15th of December, a little bit later in the calendar this year. But basically, the reason the Rule 5 draft exists is so once you sign or draft players from free agency, from international free agency, I should say, not regular free agency, you have a finite number of years you can keep them in your minor league season, so apparatus, whatever, without protecting them on the 40-man roster. Basically, the whole point of this is so that the good teams can't just stash a whole bunch of major league ready players and keep them in the minor leagues until they see fit. This is kind of to protect those players, give them a chance to make it to the big leagues. If someone is taken in the Rule 5 draft, they must stay on the big league roster of the team that takes them in that draft all season long, barring injury, or they go right back to the team where they were taken from. Now, why does this matter? Why is this important? Well, this is the one time baseball front offices can't lie. They can't. I mean, they can, but it serves no benefit to them. This, more than any prospect rankings from any prospect prognosticator that makes a list of the most important best Rangers prospects, like me, like I'll do probably in January or maybe actually during Thanksgiving, who knows? But anyone who's making a list of who's the most important Rangers prospect, we've got all of our opinions, all of our thoughts and misgivings, and all these different leaks of potential trade packages of, oh, the Rangers really, really like this guy, and oh, they really, really like this guy. This is cold, hard facts that they cannot lie. They say, okay, this guy, we cannot risk losing this guy in the Rule 5 draft, so we got to put him on our 40-man roster. And sometimes there are some obvious moves in there. There are a few 3 locks, I would say, that for sure are going to be added ahead of this deadline. There are some that are on the fringes, and there are some guys already on this 40-man roster who, I think they might just be cut today, at some point this afternoon, maybe even as I am recording this at 10:48 a.m. Central Time. But I love this because it's the one time that front offices cannot lie, and sometimes they'll surprise us. Like last year, not adding Antoine Kelly to the 40-man roster, left-handed pitcher who the Rangers got in the Matt Bush trade from the Milwaukee Brewers, a lefty who threw very, very hard and struck out a bunch of guys and stopped walking guys. I was floored that the Rangers didn't protect him last year. And he ended up having a really, really bad season between AAA and AA this year. Shows what I know. Obviously, these front offices have a lot more data, a lot better resources, and a lot smarter people evaluating these prospects than just myself, occasionally going to Frisco game and saying, oh, I like that guy. I'm pretty knowledgeable when it comes to the average baseball fan, but compared to professional scouts and GMs and all of the information they have access to, they tend to make a little bit more informed decisions, which is why they added Jose Corniel to the 40-man roster last year, even though he was missing this entire season. I thought that was particularly interesting. Another deadline to keep an eye on. I'm not going to talk about it this week because it doesn't happen until Friday afternoon. It's the non-tender deadline where the Rangers can just decide to non-tender guys who are up for arbitration, or even you could do it in pre-arb. I don't anticipate them doing that to any pre-arb guys. But if the Rangers see, Dane Dunning is going to ask for and maybe successfully win in arbitration somewhere around $5 million, I think it's just more beneficial to the organization to just straight up cut him loose. Same could possibly be said of Leody Taveras. Other than that, I don't see the Rangers even, debating that with anybody else, but I'll probably have to save that until Monday's episode to talk about that because I have 3 guests the rest of this week. Should be some very entertaining stuff. Grant Schiller, also Aram Layton, who is a national prospect writer for Just Baseball, and then a crossover episode tomorrow with Javi Reyes talking a little bit about Jurickson Profar and just some similarities between the Rangers and the Padres. So that's what we got coming up for the rest of this week. Now, let's look at this Rule 5 40-man roster deadline. As of right now, the Rangers have 37 people on their 40-man roster, which means that it'd be very easy for them to guarantee at least 3 guys. So I'm saying there are 3 locks, not just because of that, because of the 3 players that I have listed here. Now, let's look at the 3 guys that I think are absolute locks to be protected on this 40-man roster to be added ahead of this deadline at 5 o'clock today. Number 1, Emiliano Teodo. It's coming off of a sensational season, possibly, maybe the second or third. I'd say third most promising, maybe fourth. Maybe I'm downplaying this. Emiliano Teodo is a guy who had a fantastic season for the Frisco Rough Riders, a sub-2 ERA in 86 1/3 innings, 20 outings, 19 of those were starts. He's a 23-year-old who is 1.3 years younger than the average pitcher in the Texas League. Just had a phenomenal season. Still struggling with those walks, 5.2 walks per 9, but he took a huge step forward this year and showing, hey, this is not just a for sure reliever. Could very much end up being a reliever just because he throws hard and has a wicked nasty breaking ball, and the third pitch is a little questionable at this point with that changeup. If he can get that changeup to be at least an average pitch, then we're talking a back-end rotation pitcher. I still think that his highest value is absolutely sick, nasty, disgusting closer who is just getting crazy strikeout numbers. I mean, for his career in the minors, 12.3 Ks per 9. He's always had a walk problem of 5 walks per 9 in his career in the minor leagues. But when he was a reliever in the Arizona Fall League in 2023, 8 games there, 11 scoreless innings, 5 saves, 3 walks, 19 strikeouts. The guy was just straight up unhittable. And I think there's a very real, and if not likely, chance that he is in the Rangers bullpen on opening day in a high leverage relief role. He's just that good. Now, with any pitcher, the Rangers will want to give him as much leash to stay as a starter as they can, but with so many holes in this bullpen that I don't think they can fill them all through free agency, Teodo is one of, the most likely candidate to join that bullpen from the jump, from the get-go on day 1 of the season that has not already made his major league debut. The next guy on this list is another pitcher who had a fantastic season. We also got an infielder. Those are the 3 locks. We'll talk about who they are and who the Rangers will cut to make space for the guys who aren't locks right after this. The show is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the best place to get the tickets for all the live events you're wanting to go to. Whether you're wanting to go check out a Mavs game or check out a Stars game or check out some college hoops or a concert or theater, no matter what you're wanting to go to. Gametime is the best place to get your tickets, and Gametime Picks makes it easier to get tickets for all the different events you're wanting to go to. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff so you only see incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You've got all kinds of great features, just like all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. They've also got the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% the difference. They've also got the purchase covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. And the next guy that is a lock for making the Rangers 40-man roster protected ahead of this Rule 5 deadline is Winston Santos, the right-handed starting pitcher who had a very, very good season this year, was the breakout story of the Rangers' first half. And then there were quite a few other breakout stories like Kamar Rocker, Emiliano Teodo. Both of these guys had phenomenal first halves, still pretty decent second halves for more for Teodo than for Winston Santos. Once he got to Frisco, he put up pretty similar numbers to what he did in Hickory, basically identical. I mean, the hits per 9, the walks per 9, the strikeouts per 9, all those were right around the same, but he had a 4.89 ERA in Frisco versus a 2.80 ERA in High A Hickory. The only real reason is that he allowed 4 times the home runs per 9, 1.6 homers per 9 in Frisco and 0.4 homers per 9 in Hickory. Still one of the best fastballs in the entire organization. Really, really good command of it, the shape of it, the velocity of it. Not touching triple digits, usually sitting in around the mid-90s. I think topping out at around 98-ish miles an hour. Slider took a big jump forward. Also, I believe has a changeup that he uses against those lefties to keep them off balance. Does have some reliever risk, and if the Rangers left him unprotected, I guarantee someone would snap him up in a heartbeat, maybe even the first overall pick in this Rule 5 draft. So the Rangers are absolutely adding him to their 40-man roster. No questions about that. Next guy, the last block on this list, is infielder Maximo Acosta. This is a guy who was signed as a big money free agent, international free agent, a lot of hype on him, and the hype just kept on going down once he made his debut. I mean, the offense just was never really there. I mean, he was 18 in the Arizona Complex League. He had a sub 700 OPS there. And down east, his first full season, a 703 OPS as a 19-year-old. Decently impressive, but not anything to really write home about. As a 20-year-old, they round 700 OPS, and then this year as a 21-year-old in Frisco, first half was nothing spectacular, but really from about July 10th on was when he started to hit his stride offensively. But even with the offensive questions, I thought this guy was going to be a lock with his defense alone. He plays shortstop, he plays second base, he plays third base, and he can really, really pick it. I mean, the instincts, the quick twitch, the arm is, no bazooka, but it's still a really good arm that'll play on the left side of the diamond. I mean, some of the plays that I saw him make at second base last year were just truly incredible. The range that he had, that alone makes me think, okay, this guy can hit a lick, then he is going to be protected. And from July 10th on, he really just started to, click. He had an 894 OPS from that point through the end of the regular season. He also hit 5 of his 8 home runs on the year. And then in the Arizona Fall League, he really tore it up. 20 plate appearances there, a 934 or 20 games. 80 plate appearances, a much bigger sample size than just 20 plate appearances, a 934 OPS there where he hit over 330, 2 points shy of 340. On base was over 400, slugging over 520. Just a really, really good performance, which the Fall League is a little bit of an offense-friendly kind of place. But according to Scott Lucas, he did a really, really good write-up talking about all these guys who are 40-man, or I guess Rule 5 protection eligible. This is something that he wrote. He said, quote, "The underlying metrics were impressive, not mere Arizona flattery. Among 46 hitters with at least 25 balls in play, Acosta ranked 3rd with median exit velocity of 96.9 miles per hour. That is from Scott Lucas, scottlucas.com. Go check out his 40-man preview. Really helped me get my brain around all these different guys. And that is really encouraging stuff because Acosta's glove makes that floor really high. And if he can hit worth a lick, boy, that might be a really, really intriguing prospect. I don't know where he would play at the big league level, but if the Rangers do decide to move on from Zeke Durant or Josh Smith, then maybe, just maybe, I think this guy, as soon as like tomorrow, might end up being a decent bench glove first kind of utility infielder that could end up making his big league debut by the end of this year. Now, those are the three spots that are guaranteed. The Rangers, if they want to protect any more guys, will have to clear up some 40-man roster spots. So there are some guys that are some candidates to make way on this 40-man roster. Let's look at a few different categories. I'd say 4 different categories. We already talked about one of them, which is the non-tender category. Dane Dunning, maybe Leody Taveras. I don't see the Rangers non-tendering Leody. As much as he's frustrating, I just don't see them non-tendering him as opposed to just trading him to somewhere else. Still got some value, even if you're selling low. Now, this is the FIFO category. First in, first out. Most recent guys we added to this 40-man roster. We have Roansy Contreras, a Los Angeles Angel waiver, a claim from the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, who are, actually in Anaheim or formerly California, whatever. Not a really intriguing candidate. I think if the Rangers just made this claim on this guy to keep him for a week and then cut him, wouldn't really make sense. But honestly, you see it all the time. The other waiver claim that got assigned to a quote unquote big league deal, Luis Carvello, a guy who hasn't pitched much above A ball, a former Seattle Mariner, another right-handed relief pitcher. Maybe those guys just are the first ones to go. Then we have the category I call better options. I think there's just better options out there for more, long-term value to add different guys, mainly these guys I'm going to talk about later, to your 40-man roster. And also the Rangers will have to make room on the 40 for free agents. So they could end up making more than just these cuts that I'm going to project at the end of this episode, saying who I think they protect, who I think they cut. The better options category includes such greats as Gerson Garabito, who provided some value, but I don't see him sticking around in the long term. You also have Daniel Robert, the longtime minor leaguer who finally made his big league debut this season. Again, the stuff was fine. The results were fine, but just I think there are better ways to use 40-man roster spots. Matt Festa had a good-ish year for the Rangers. I expected nothing from him, and he really showed out. I think he might be, of this group, the least likely to be just straight up cut. And then Sandro Fabian, who was just not that inspiring. I was really surprised that he even got a look at the big leagues this year. I mean, he only played in 3 games, only had 5 plate appearances. He didn't strike out. He didn't walk, just went 0 for 5 in the 3 games that he was there. Then we have the time is up category, guys who have been heralded prospects who have just underperformed for long enough that it seems like the Rangers just can't keep these guys around. They're just not worth the 40-man roster spot anymore. This includes the likes of Owen White, who just had a really bad year. The stuff has been backing up for a couple of years. It's really, really frustrating. I thought that at worst he would be a good high leverage reliever. And then he had neck problems and the velocity and the stuff just completely fell off, and he just has not been the same. It come be in some mop-up innings. That's about all he was good enough to do this year. I mean, 3 games, 3 innings, and a 24 ERA. Not really something that is somebody who is worth a 40-man roster spot. You also have the likes of Sam Huff, who, if the Rangers, with just how terrible Andrew Kisner was this year, a guy with a 394 OPS, if the Rangers couldn't decide to give Sam Huff more than 4 plate appearances this year with how bad their catchers were hitting, I think that kind of tells you everything you need to know about what they think of Sam Huff. Not a super inspiring year offensively in AAA. He's had those in the past. I don't know if he's actually a catcher in the long term. There are very few, if any, people in this entire organization with more raw pop than Sam Huff. But again, if he couldn't get a chance this year, I think that kind of says all you need to know about what the Rangers in general think of Sam Huff. I was a little surprised that he even made it through last year. There are only two more guys on this list. Cole Winn, another former first-round pick who had a really, really good scoreless streak, and the peripherals were not quite there, but it looked all right for the first couple of outings of his big league career. And then the last few outings, he just got absolutely obliterated in the season with a 7.79 ERA in 17 and a third innings. Not a whole lot of strikeouts, not a whole lot of walks. So that was encouraging because that was a big, big problem for Cole Winn. But I wouldn't be surprised the Rangers just straight up cut bait with him and signed him to a minor league deal. And the last guy on this list, I don't see this particularly happening, but I wouldn't be incredibly shocked. Justin Foskey, who just had an awful first year in the big leagues, didn't hit lefties well, didn't hit righties well, can't play defense. 15 games, and he had and only 44 plate appearances, and he had a negative 0.7 WAR. That is impressively bad. I think there's still something in that bat, but I don't know if the Rangers could even flip him for much of anything at this point. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Rangers just straight up cut bait with him. Now, let's look at who they would be making room for, the last few guys on this list, and where I think the Rangers will end up making their decisions on guys to protect by the end of the day, right after this. The show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you've placed your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. I don't think they have any odds on who the Rangers are adding to their 40-man roster today. I'm very certain they don't have any odds on that, or even who the Rangers will select in the Rule 5 draft. But you can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now we have the guys who are surefire locks to make the Rangers 40-man roster today. We have the possible options to cut. Now, who are the guys on the fringes who the Rangers might just protect? Let's start with first baseman Abimelec Ortiz. Going to have to go kind of rapid fire through these guys. Abimelec Ortiz had a 949 OPS in the second half, 13 bombs in 58 games. He was just put up terrible numbers in the first half in Frisco, a 556 OPS in that first half. But I was watching him in Frisco and I was just very confused because the at-bats, the process, all of that was quality. It wasn't just, hacking at everything and expanding the strike zone and all that. He was putting together quality at bats, just the results weren't quite there. A first baseman only, so the guy is going to have to rake. Turns 23 in February, and he was the Rangers' breakout hitter in 2023, an undrafted free agent who the Rangers signed after that smaller 2020 draft. There were quite a few guys that were there that are a few of them are going to be on this list. He had 36 home runs in 121 games in 2023. The first half looked rough. Second half looked like, okay, this is a guy who can absolutely mash. Not often are first basemen taken in the Rule 5 draft, but this might be a guy who might be the exception. Next guy on this list, a left-handed relief pitcher, Brian Magdaleno. He's got a fastball that's 96 to 98. Also got a pretty nasty slider. He's 23 years old, and this was from Scott Lucas, who saw him in person. He said, quote, "I was witness to game 3 of a 20-game scoreless streak, excluding one extra inning unearned run, during which Magdaleno allowed 3 hits in 25 innings, walked or hit 11, and struck out 41, which was a 47% strikeout rate." Magdaleno was not a guy that was really on my radar until I started reading what Scott Lucas had to say about him. And then I went back and looked and said, oh boy, this guy was downright incredible. Started his season in Down East, ended his season as a high leverage reliever in Frisco, a 127 ERA with 68 strikeouts in 42 and 2/3 innings, over 14 Ks per 9, 4 hits per 9, just 1 home run given up all season long. And that 20-game scoreless streak, he only had 5 games of the 36 he pitched this year where he allowed earned runs at all. So he had scoreless streaks of 3 games, then 9 games, and then 20 games. If you're a lefty, you throw 96 to 98, you have a pretty good slider. I would be very shocked if this guy didn't get added to the 40-man roster. And again, he is pretty young, and he only pitched in 4 games with Frisco before the playoffs. But I think this guy should be added to the list. Next guy on this list, first baseman Blaine Krim. Kind of a similar season to Abimelec Ortiz, a 1,000 OPS in the second half, 13 bombs in 68 games. He's 27 years old, and he is a first baseman. I love Blaine Grimm to death. A very thick Alabama accent from Mobile, but he's a first baseman. He's 27 years old. I don't see him getting picked. I think he's big league ready, but again, the Rangers have a first baseman who's pretty darn good. I don't think that Blaine Krim is going to get anywhere near Nate Lowe's defense or maybe even his offense, but he's a guy that I think deserves a shot at the big leagues, and I'm not sure he'll get it in Texas. Dane Acker, part of the right-handed pitcher, part of the Jonah Heim, Chris Davis, Elvis Andrus trade with Oakland, the guy who's always had a high ceiling. And this year, as a reliever, he really started to show it. A 1.10 ERA in 9 relief games, started 18 games for Frisco, a 3.32 ERA. Most of his relief outings were multiple innings, including one where he only had one of those 9 where he allowed an earned run. He had 16 strikeouts, just 2 walks as a reliever. Josh Steven, love me, a local boy. Not the most explosive stuff, not really that great of a season. He was undrafted free agent out of South Grand Prairie High School, part of that 2020 undrafted class. Another season where injuries shortened his year. Got a pretty good slider, looked good in the AFL, but his stuff is just not quite good enough to stick in a big league pen for the full season. Infielder Cody Freeman, he is no longer catching, playing third base, decent offensive season, but I just don't see him getting picked. Ryan Garcia, a former third-round pick, fine year in Double-A as a starter, but I'm not losing sleep if he's getting picked. I'm not sure that he would. Aiden Curry, who is MLB Pipeline's number 19 Rangers prospect, just did not have a good year. He got absolutely lit up. His fastball is 92 to 94, tops out at 96. Pretty good slider, decent changeup. He's 6'5", so maybe there's a few more ticks to add on the fastball. But since he was getting lit up in high A, and I don't believe he's made it to Double-A, I just don't see some team picking him and stashing him on their big league roster for the full season, even though some people thought that might be a difficult choice, especially with him having such a high, prospect ranking. And MLB Pipeline's not the only ones who are high on Aiden Curry. I just don't see some team sticking it. Maybe they do try and make it through a full season with Aiden Curry on their roster, but I'm just not seeing that happening. So my picks of who the Rangers should and or will protect. I think you've got the 3 locks, obviously, in Emiliano Teodo, Maximo Acosta. Then I think they protect Abimelec Ortiz, Brian Magdaleno, and Dane Acker was the one that I agonized over. I just haven't quite been able to, make out what to make of him for the last couple of years. He had a really pretty good season in Frisco and Hickory as well in 2023, a combined 2.5 ERA in 18 games. All of those were starts, a 67 innings. He had, over 10 strikeouts per 9, had a little bit of a walk problem. Got that walk problem really under control this year. And so the Rangers have been high on this guy for a while. They've been talking about how, wow, I can't believe we got him and Jonah Heim in that Chris Davis deal where all the Rangers gave up was a little bit of cash. A minor leaguer whose name I cannot remember, even though I just looked it up 10 minutes before the show started, and Elvis Andrus. And they got a bad Chris Davis, an all-star World Series champion catcher, and this guy as well. So I think the Rangers do end up protecting Dane Acker, even though it was a choice that I agonized over. And so this would mean 3 cuts right now off this 40-man roster. And I think, as frustrating as it is, I think that Owen White might be the first one to go. I have been a high guy on Owen White, and unless he just magically finds that, that velocity and that nasty slider that he had, he's still got that bulldog mentality, that a little bit psycho in a good way mentality that makes for a really great back end reliever, which is why I always really liked Owen Barfight White nickname bestowed by tepid participation on Twitter. But it's just been 2 years, and he has not been good. Not been good at the big leagues. He has not been good in AAA. He has not been good really anywhere he's pitched. And so I think it is going to be time that the Rangers do end up cutting bait with Owen White. The next guy I think the Rangers cut is Sandro Fabian. He's fine. It didn't have a bad season. I mean, he looked pretty decent in AAA, but I mean, there's not really much in the underlying data. He's a corner outfielder who can kind of hit. Didn't really get much of a chance at the big league level. I was honestly really surprised that he got to make his big league debut. And he seems like a kind of guy who would probably go to Japan, maybe go to the KBO and just dominate there, and then try and make his way to the big leagues, or back to the big leagues, I should say, through that route. But I don't see the Rangers protecting him, and maybe someone would take him if the Rangers did leave him unprotected, but it's not anyone I'm losing sleep over. And then the last pick to not make it through the winter on the 40-man roster is Sam Huff. Man, I've been the high guy on Sam Huff for a long time, but this was a hard year to be a Sam Huff defender. I think that this guy still has potential, but he's getting older. I love a catcher that can hit the absolute snot out of the baseball. In fact, I love anybody with 80 grade raw power, as displayed by my love for my large adult son, Joseph Nicholas Gallo. Anybody who can get a baseball to the moon, I'm going to be a big believer in. He's shown decent plate discipline at times through the minor leagues, but a 6'5" catcher, there's not a lot of those for a reason. If the Rangers can't teach him to be a passable defensive catcher who occasionally will just pop a decent number of home runs because he is just strong as the Dickens, strong as Paul Bunyan, I just don't see him making it through another winter and the Rangers protecting him. I honestly don't see anyone. Maybe someone will take a chance with him and take him in the Rule 5 draft, but I just can't really see him sticking on. He's not going to be taking the Rule 5 draft because he's already on the Rangers 40-man rosters. They would just have to straight up cut bait with him, and someone would claim him on waivers. That's how all of that would work. But I think it's just time. I think the time of Owen White, Sandro Fabian, and Sam Huff in Texas might just be over. I think the time for Emiliano Teodo, Winston Santos, Maximo Acosta, Abimelec Ortiz, Brian Magdaleno, and Dane Acker, I think that's just starting. And I am really fascinated to see what the Rangers do with their 40-man roster over the next couple of days and who they actually like, as opposed to who they just say nice things about until it's time to put rubber to the road. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy Texas Rangers baseball.